Hey all, Ron here from Military Images with a new episode of A Life on the Civil War Research Trail. Let's say if you were able to step into a time machine, flashback to the beginning of the Civil War, and interview people about its cause, you'd likely receive varied explanations, all connected to slavery: political, moral, and economic. Of course, time machine isn't available, but a number of folks left behind writings that illustrate the points. I'm going to give you a selection of those writings from three men: a Northerner, a Southerner, and a British subject. So let's begin with the political argument. You'll meet here Hiram Fuller, life dates 1814 to 1880. He was a journalist from Massachusetts who wrote under the pen name Bell Britain. In the 1840s, he got caught up in criticizing Edgar Allan Poe. Poe reacted in 1846 by suing Fuller for slander and won. 15 years later, Fuller turns up in support, the Massachusetts journalist in support of the nascent Confederacy. On December 19th, 1861, in St. James Hall in London, packed with British subjects, Fuller delivered an address titled "The Causes and Consequences of the Civil War in America." Here's his reason. Here's what he believes is the main cause: abolitionism. Abolitionism caused the war, he says, and secessionism precipitated. But here, ladies and gentlemen, Fuller continues, it is necessary to state the peculiar kind and form of abolitionism that has divided, dissevered, and destroyed the harmony and the union of the American states. It is purely a political and not a social abolitionism that has done the mischief. The free soilers of Congress and not the emancipation philanthropists of Boston or of Exeter Hall that have driven the South into secession. The Lincoln administration represents the free soil, not the abolition party, pure and simple. This free soil or Republican Party, which has been growing in power and pugnacity since its inauguration under President Van Buren, is strenuously opposed to the admission of new slave states, not on moral grounds, not because it would increase the number of slaves or the evils of slavery, but because every new state adds two new members to the Senate, and every new Southern senator is an additional check upon the sectional legislation of the North, upon tariff laws, navigation laws, and internal improvement laws, that's infrastructure, enacted for the protection and aggrandizement of Northern manufacturers, traders, and politicians. The social or economic, sentimental abolitionists are comparatively insignificant in numbers and influence, with scarcely a representative in Congress and certainly not one in the cabinet. So that's the political argument. Here's the moral argument, and it comes from William Taylor, life dates 1821 to 1902, a minister and author who wrote Causes and Probable Results of the War in America, Facts for the People of Great Britain in 1862. Taylor tells us his story in the preface. He says, quote, "In submitting a few facts to the good people of Great Britain, I will just remark that I am not acting under the auspices or instructions of any party, political or otherwise, but finding in the minds of so many of my friends here a misapprehension of the principal facts and issues of the American war, I felt impelled by a sense of duty to the cause of truth and righteousness to write. I am a native of the Shenandoah Valley, Virginia, spent 28 years of my life in the South, and have spent 13 years in extensive explorations through nearly all the free states from the Atlantic to the Pacific, and am therefore quite familiar with the facts which I have represented here. And I respectfully submit." So let's listen to an excerpt. In fact, here's Taylor's number one cause. It is a severe chastisement of the American nation for national sins. He goes on, the chastisement is both retributive and disciplinary. In regard to discipline, I may simply say that no man or corporation or nation can attain to humble permanent greatness without great struggles in the school of adversity. If they cannot stand the ordeal, they cannot reach the end to which it is a means. In regard to God's retributive dealing with the American people, it is generally admitted by all concerned that as a nation we have been very ungrateful, haughty, and wicked in the sight of the Lord. We have sinned grievously against God and in humanity, not only by our complicity with slavery, but in numerous ways besides. Proportionate to the light enjoyed and the consequent responsibility involved, so is the guilt of disobedience. Hence, we may reasonably expect that the retributions of God to be visited upon the nation will be terribly severe. The secessionists are the principal rod used by the Lord for the chastisement of the loyal states, not simply by the action of armies in the field, but also by all the humiliating comments of the war at home and abroad. Had the federal armies been uniformly successful, the chastening purpose of God would not have been realized at all. Why? As late as last June, I traveled extensively through the northern, western, and some of the border states, and to see then the crowded churches and schools and places of amusement and the activity and general prosperity in almost every department of business and the good cheer that seemed everywhere to prevail, a man unacquainted with the facts would not have dreamed of war anywhere on the American continent. Up to that time, the loyal states had responded promptly to every call of the government for men and means, and as soon as the demand was met, they turned everyone to his farm and to his merchandise, and except in cases of personal bereavement from the loss of friends in the war, there seemed to be but little humiliation before God or recognition of his chastening hand. I felt then and said to many friends that if the Lord designed a chastisement of the nation that would improve her relations to his moral government, he would have to deal with us much more severely than he has done. That we certainly have not yet ready for a successful on to Richmond. So, that's Mr. Taylor and the moral argument that the northern states and the whole country is learning a valuable lesson at the hands of the South and the North being chastised. Now, last is the economic argument, and that comes to us from James Paul Cobbett. Life dates 1803 to 1881. He's an English political commentator and author of textbooks. He shared his opinion about the roots of the American Civil War in September 1861 in a pamphlet titled Causes of the Civil War in the United States. And here is what he has to say. Nothing can be clearer than that this Civil War has been brought about by what was called unexampled prosperity. Society in America has been rapidly made to consist of great cities, the immediate creator of those cities being a false commerce, that commerce again being founded on and sustained by a system of finance which, as Mr. Bernal Osborne said of our own military system in 1855, has been a system thoroughly rotten to the core. The nation has been a wholesale importer of gewgaws, shiny, sparkly objects, and carrying on an enormous speculative trade in which it had no proper call to be engaged, a trade tending to neither individual happiness nor national strength, but to the reverse of both. The writing from that side which we read is commonly that of men who are busy and interested in such a state of things. Being thus interested, these men are mortified at the present embarrassment, proclaiming their chagrin in the incoherent tirades now seen in their press. Amidst the din they make, we, at a distance, do not hear the voices of those other men who have long expressed their indignation at the success of fraud and dishonesty, men who have been scourged by the effects and who themselves, respectable citizens, have now to help bear the shame. So there's the economic argument, rounding out the three arguments that are related to slavery: the political, the moral, and the economic. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research